Welcome to history class again. So in this history class, as you know, we're going through the Story of the World, Book 2, which is going to take us through the Middle Ages, or the medieval period, right? So we've been talking about a lot of different parts of the world as we do this. And last week, we had a focus on two different areas. Can someone tell me the two areas? Yeah, Jaden.
India
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know what that part is.
Yep.
Mecca?
India and what was it?
Roman Empire.
Not the Roman Empire.
I know.
What? What is it,
The
Luke?
Arabian Peninsula.
Yes, the Arabian Peninsula. So that was the beginnings of Islam, right? We talked about the beginnings of Islam. So the first one, actually, I tricked you a little bit. Here's the map for the first one. That is the area of India that we talked about. And what was the empire called again?
The Gupta.
So we're going to start with our review section. So this is going to be a review of Chapter 5. Chapter 5, okay? Just a little review. I'll ask you a few questions. You ready?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So can someone tell me, what are the highest mountains in the world that are located in northern India? I saw Luke's hand first. Yes, the Himalaya Mountains. Great. What is the most important river in India? Yeah.
The Ganges.
Yeah, the Ganges. Okay, so the Indus is also important, which is to the west side of India, but the Ganges is very, very important to Indian culture even today. So what is the name of the Indian language? Anybody get that? Yeah, Josiah. Remember, it starts with an S? Sounds like sand. Can you guys say it together?
Sanskrit.
Sanskrit. That is the name of the Indian language. I showed you some pictures last week to show you what the Sanskrit language looked like. Okay, let's do a little bit more about India. Can someone tell me the... does anyone remember the name of the Indian emperor or king, the head of the Gupta dynasty, who drove out the Huns? Yeah, Jaden. Chandragupta the first. He was the first one. But Skandagupta was the name of the first, or of the one that actually drove out the Huns. Okay, Skandagupta. Okay, so he was one of the most important kings of that time. So, so why did the golden age of India end? Because this time during the Gupta Empire was a golden age, but why did it end? Yeah, Josiah?
It ended because of when he fought off all the Huns. They destroyed the whole land, so all of it became poor.
Right.
Not really.
Well, that's very good. Let's see. I'm going to add some more to that, Jaden.
So after they had fought, they actually won, thankfully. But now they're really weak because the Huns were so dangerous. They killed lots of the Indians. Okay. Now they were so weak that they started dividing. Okay, thanks for adding that. So you and Josiah gave a good summary of what happened. Basically, when the Huns attacked, Skandagupta was successful in defeating them, but they caused so much damage that things went downhill, we could say. So, so that was the end of the golden age of India. So let's see. Can someone tell me who created and lived in the Ajanta Caves? Yeah, Luke. Monks.
Monks. What kind of monks were they?
Hinduism monks.
No, they weren't Hindu monks.
Wait, I'm thinking,
Yeah. Sorry, Luke, got it.
Wait, I think, Muslim.
No, they weren't Muslim in this case. What were they, Luke?
Buddhism.
Yeah, they were Buddhist monks. So Buddhist monks lived in the Ajanta Caves. And they made some really amazing works of art, right? They did sculptures. And does anyone remember what that other art was where they paint on wet plaster? Yeah, you know? Allie?
I don't remember what sculpture they paint on wet plaster and then when it's gone.
Yeah, exactly. Good. You know what the name was, Luke?
Fresco.
Yeah, well, they were called frescoes. Great job. Okay, good job, guys. Good job describing that. Okay, so this Gupta dynasty was a good time in India. It was a golden age, but it ended with the Huns causing so much damage and attacking. And so you can see our map that we looked at showing the extent of the Gupta dynasty and their capital city right there. Okay, great job. So next, we're going to move on. Well, let me just point out to you again, India's Gupta dynasty was, if we look at our timeline up here, starting at 1 AD, the beginning of 1 AD, and we go this way with our timeline. Does anyone have any idea where the Gupta dynasty was in the year? Around what year? Yeah. Jaden.
600s. In the 500s.
Started earlier, though.
300?
Yeah, the 300s. So about 320 was the beginning of the Gupta dynasty. And it lasted for about 200 years. So a long dynasty. Okay, great job. So we're going to move on now to review our second chapter, which is chapter 6. Okay, so chapter 6, we talked about the beginning of Islam. The beginning of Islam, what we call the rise of Islam. So I'm going to put a map up for this one so you can remember. Okay, so we're going to move back. Where is, this is Arabia, right? Where is India? Is India east or west of Arabia?
East.
Yeah, it's closer to the east, okay? So India would be over here to the right of our map, and we moved west, and now we're talking about Arabia. Can anyone remember some things about Muhammad? What are the followers of Muhammad called, the ones who followed his teachings? Let's see, Jaden?
Muslims.
Yeah, Muslims, that's right. So their religion is called what?
Islam.
Islam. So Islam is the religion that Muslims followed, and it was started by the prophet, their prophet, called? Muhammad. Okay, great. So that's a good thing to know. And what is the name of the book that the Muslims have? Let's see. Well, same time, I saw your hands. Go ahead.
Quran.
The Quran, that's right. So they have a book of Muhammad's teachings called the Quran. Now, when was the Quran written down? Or collected, we would say. Yeah.
Wait, when in time or when?
Let's see.
What do you mean how or do you mean how?
Let's start the question how. How was it collected?
So his friend Abu Bakr, I don't know how to say his name.
Abu Bakr.
Abu Bakr. Yeah,
Okay,
I think that's how I say it.
Well,
I'm sure we corrected, but-
so many people loved Muhammad's teachings, and they thought that it was I guess holy, and they wrote down wherever they could: palm leaves, pieces of leather, stone.
Right.
So, and then Abu Bakr told everybody to gather them.
Right.
And if it was written here or there, or even in their minds,
right.
And then he put them all together and then just wrote them. So it was written in a very short time.
Yeah, right, exactly right. So it was actually collected all together in a short time from whatever people wrote down about Muhammad. And this was after Muhammad died. So Muhammad died, and that's when Abu Bakr got everybody to write everything or bring in all that they had written down and put it into one book, which is called the Quran. So that's a great thing to know. So Muhammad had a vision in a cave. Who did he believe was speaking to him? Who spoke to him? Yeah, Luke?
Gabriel.
Yeah, he believed it was the angel Gabriel speaking to him, giving him these words. And much of the teaching, that is what much of the teaching written in the Quran was said to be from. So, what happened? Muhammad started Islam in Mecca, right? In the city of Mecca. But what did the people in Mecca feel about his teachings? Like the different people, yeah.
Well, the poor people were just, listen to that, give us some stuff.
Yeah, the poorer people they liked it because they wanted to be helped by the richer people, right?
But then the rich people were just, wait, why do we have to listen to him? I don't want to share my stuff.
Okay, great. So the people who were more wealthy, they didn't really care for it. They didn't like his teaching, but the poorer people did. But eventually, Muhammad had to leave Mecca, right? And what city did he go to? Did he travel to? Yeah, Josiah?
Medina.
That's correct. He traveled to Medina. He had to escape quickly one night along with Abu Bakr, and they were chased by some angry men, which in some cases they call them soldiers, in others it's an angry crowd of people. But where did Muhammad and Abu Bakr hide from these people? Yeah, Luke?
In a cave.
In a cave. And why didn't these angry people go into the cave? Yeah, Jaden?
Because there was a giant spider web that stretched all across the opening, and it wasn't broken. So then they thought that Abu Bakr and Muhammad could have been there, or else the spider web would have been broken.
Exactly right. So Muslims may look at this as a protection from God on Muhammad by doing that. So how did the spider web not get broken if Muhammad and Abu Bakr had gone in there?
Well, also, thankfully, those men were smart. If they were dumb, they would have just charged in.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, I guess that would be a good thing, too, for them. Okay, so this journey that Muhammad took, remember, was called the Hajira, and the Hajira, the date of the Hajira, is actually what starts the Muslim calendar at this time period in the what is the Hajira was 624, was it? Or 622, 624? So I'll check the date later, but that actually begins the Muslim era. So like we have 1 AD, the beginning with the birth of Christ, they have this Hajira of Muhammad when he moved from Mecca to Medina, beginning their time period for the Muslim era as they see it. Okay? All right, great. Any other questions for our review of chapter 6 about the rise of Islam? No? Okay. This is chapter 7. Chapter 7. The spread of Islam. So in this case, the map shows the spread of Islam, but chapter 7 is telling us that Islam didn't just remain in Medina, right? How do we know that it didn't just remain in Medina?
Because it isn't just in Medina now.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just in Medina even now. Islam is actually, you'll find that religion all over the world in many places, and many countries are very focused on this religion as a main part of their leadership, as their government in some cases. So Muhammad moved, remember, from Mecca to Medina, and he didn't stay there. But Muhammad things for Muhammad changed. At this point, no longer was he just a prophet. Well, no longer was he considered to be a prophet or bringing this religion to people, but he actually became the leader or the ruler of a whole city. He became the ruler of the city of Medina. The people there all started to follow him, and so he had a bit of a problem, though, because as the leader, they came to him with all their problems. Like one guy may have come to him and said, it says in our book, one man sells a camel to another man, but then the next morning that camel that he bought died. So he comes to Muhammad and he said, my neighbor sold me a camel. I paid him in gold, but the next day the camel died. Shouldn't he give the money back to me because it died so quickly? So that's a tough question, right? So Muhammad, as the leader, then, he had to come up with rules and laws to make these judgments for people.
So what did he say?
I'm not sure about that particular case. We'll have to look into that. But that's a tough question. It reminds me of the time of, do you remember the King Solomon of Israel? Yeah. And the two women came saying that the baby was their baby. And he had to make a decision. He had to use his wisdom to decide who was the real mother of the baby, if you remember that from the book of 1 Kings.
And I know how he decided.
Yeah, so we'll talk more about that at some point. But in this case, Muhammad is in a similar position. He has to come up with laws and rules, and he also has to make sure the people have enough food. Well, at this point, Medina had a problem. The people didn't have enough food, they didn't have enough water, and who did they come to when they had a problem?
Muhammad.
They went straight to Muhammad. So, what was Muhammad's solution? Well, Muhammad told the people, now you can go out, and I want you to go out to the desert and look for a caravans that are heading for Mecca. They're old enemies, right? Because remember, this is a place where there were a lot of caravans that were moving goods back and forth across the desert.
Look at the map.
So he told his people, look up here, So he told the people of Medina to go out to the desert. When they see a caravan heading for Mecca, they were supposed to, what do you think they did?
Accept it.
Attack it. Attack it and take the food and water and bring it back to the people who were hungry in Medina. Wow, that's a big step, huh? Because one of the things Muhammad was against was stealing. The people were stealing. But in this case, he believed it was right because he saw the people of Mecca as keeping the people of Medina from having what they needed. And he knew that his people needed something, so he told them to go out and just take the food. Well, how do you think the people in Mecca felt about this? They're not happy about this. Do you think they're just going to go, okay, no problem?
No.
No, they sent an army to attack Medina. And Muhammad, he got his people together quickly, and they went out and they had a battle. You can see right here in 624, so I'm sorry, this must have been 622 for the Hijra. I got a little confused. But the Hijra is here. And a couple of years later, at 624, there was a huge battle here between the Meccans and the Medinans. Who do you think won that fight?
Medina.
Yep, Medina won the fight. And the Meccans had to run away. Well, at that point, Mecca was weakened enough that in the end, Muhammad was able to go and take over Mecca as well. And the reason he said they could just take another city was he declared Mecca is a holy city for Islam. And that gave them the permission to then go and take it, because he said it was a holy city of Islam. And still today, do you remember the 5 pillars of Islam that we talked about? The 5 things. Can you name some of the things that Muslims must do in their life? Yeah, Luke.
Can we say a few?
Yeah, just say it. Just a few. Go ahead.
Okay, you give money. Okay, pray to Allah 5 times a day.
Correct.
Also, give money to the poor.
Good.
Fast every morning if you're 10.
Right.
And
yeah, full fasting. They do fasting not every morning, but on the month of Ramadan. Yeah, and Ali?
And go to Mecca at least once a year.
Yeah, go to Mecca at least once in your lifetime. So those are 4 of the 5 pillars of Islam. So the reason they go to Mecca is because Muhammad declared it a holy city. So they must make this pilgrimage going to Mecca.
I mean, if they can.
Right, if they can. There's some reasons they may not be able to, but if they have the ability to, they are required to do that pilgrimage. So in Mecca, remember that cube-shaped tent called the Kaaba? Yeah. That it has a black stone inside, which they believe to be a meteorite. Yeah.
And Muhammad wiped out all the idols that were there.
Yeah, that's right. So Muhammad did go and he took away all the idols that were in the tent and just left the rock. So people still make that pilgrimage to Mecca, and they all walk around the Kaaba as we saw in the video last week. So Muhammad now ruled over Mecca, and Muhammad he actually was the very first religious leader who actually had a goal of conquering new territory and adding it to his lands in the name of his religion. So Muhammad started doing that. He started expanding the Islamic Empire. He believed he was taking it for God, and he started taking other areas. But there was a big problem that they experienced. The big problem was Muhammad died. The story that I read, it said that he one day had a headache, and he complained of the headache, and he went to go to sleep, and he never woke up. And that's often, we don't know exactly what it was he died from, but that was the story that I read about that. So when the men who had been close to Muhammad from the start, they all wanted to be the leader of the Muslims. And of course, one of the men who wanted to be the leader was Abu Bakr. Let me try to get another. Abu Bakr. Okay, so his name comes up a lot as one of the important leaders. But he wasn't the only one they wanted to be leader. Abu Bakr, we haven't mentioned this yet, but he was actually Muhammad's father-in-law.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Muhammad's father-in-law, the father of his wife. And so another man that wanted to be the leader was a man named Umar. And Umar was a friend or a companion of Muhammad, a very good friend, who was with him all the time. And third, there was a man named Ali, and he was a cousin of Muhammad. Okay, make sure you write down these three names. These are important. He was a cousin of Muhammad, and he actually married Muhammad's daughter.
Who did? Ali?
Yeah, Ali married Muhammad's daughter. Her name was Fatima. Okay, so all three of these men were with Muhammad from the beginning, and all three of them were close in different ways. So they all had a competition. They all wanted to be the leader. Eventually, Umar agreed to support Abu Bakr. And so Abu Bakr was the winner. Ali was still not happy with that. And there was actually a division, a dividing of Islam. Remember the division of the church we talked about, East and West? Well, that happened about 1,000 years after Christ, that division. But something happened in Islam right away, just after Muhammad died. There was actually a dividing line that happened between Abu Bakr and Umar and Ali. And this is a division. There are two major types of Muslims today. There's the Sunni Muslim, and there is the ones, somehow the name just flew out of my head. So the Sunni Muslims and the Shia Muslims. And there's still today, there's a major division between Sunnis and Shias. Some examples of countries that are Sunni would include Saudi Arabia and many areas around the Arabian Peninsula and around the world. The Shia are based mostly in the country of what is now Iran. So right from the beginning, there was this division of Sunni and Shia in Islam, and there have been many challenges because of that. So most of the Muslims, though, went with the Sunnis, with Abu Bakr, and he was named the new Caliph.
And that means?
Caliph is like the ruler or the emperor or the king. He became the king, basically, of the Islamic Empire, called the Caliph. And if you see the movie Aladdin, you can see in that movie there's a Caliph who's the leader. And so Abu Bakr was a very strong man, and he was able to get most of the people to follow him. But it didn't happen automatically. Abu Bakr actually had to fight with many of the tribes to get them to accept him as leader. So there was a lot of fighting that happened.
Did he die?
Well, Abu Bakr lived for quite a while, and he's the first one, and he declared what you've probably heard this word, jihad.
No, I have not heard of that.
Okay, some of you may have heard that in different places, but jihad means holy war. He declared a holy war to take more land for Islam.
Just like Muhammad did.
So, after Abu Bakr died, who became Caliph? Umar. So Umar became the leader of the Sunnis.
Alive?
Yep, he was still alive. Abu Bakr died.
Wow, Umar is old.
And under these caliphs of Abu Bakr and Umar and others who came after him, the Islamic Empire really expanded. And I'm going to show you, this gets into, over here on our timeline, up to 750 AD. This is what was called the Golden Age of Islam. And I'm going to show you a different map.
There was already a golden age. Oh, it's
Well, that was the beginnings we talked about. But the Golden Age of Islam, and you can see on the map that you have in front of you, but I'll put it on the screen too. This Golden Age of Islam, you can see where it started right here, right? This was where Islam started. But look, with these caliphs up to 750, this is the Islamic Empire. It's just showing you different kind of areas that had control. This was the main, under the direct rule of these caliphs, and these were other people who were connected to them, stretching all the way into India. See the Indus River over here?
And Spain.
And going from in the east and going all the way over to Spain in the west. As far north as into Spain, and they were into what is known as Iran today, or Persia, what it was called at that point, Persia. And this country here, between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, this is a very important area. This is actually where Abraham was from, if you remember the story of Abraham in Genesis, in this area. And the city of Baghdad became the capital of the Islamic Empire.
So dads or bags in there?
Baghdad, interesting name for us in English, right? These caliphs, they took over Persia, they took over Egypt, they took over all these areas, and they spread out. At 750, they had taken over a huge area. And the people in Europe, we're going to learn more about this later, were fighting against them. They were trying to fight to keep them from their territory. Islam will continue to spread to different areas. It ends up covering modern-day Turkey and into Europe over here in the east. And so there's a lot of that's going to happen later, and we'll talk about that, okay? All right, so let's go on to the city of Baghdad. Where have you heard about the city of Baghdad a lot recently in the news? Or, in the last 10 or 20 years? What do you think, Lee? In your lifetimes?
Iraq.
Yeah, it's in what's called Iraq today, the country of Iraq. And there's been a lot of fighting in Iraq for the last almost 20 years, or more than 20 years. So, but Baghdad, we may see on the news, and it doesn't look so good now because of some damage that's been done over the years. But actually, Baghdad became known for very beautiful buildings. It had running water. Even back in these early days, in the 700s, had running water. It had public libraries. It had many scholars, many libraries and books. Famous people were living there writing books, including a book called The 1001 Nights. The 1001 Nights.
1001?
Yeah, that's right. And in that book, The 1001 Nights, there's a famous story of Sinbad the sailor. In your Story of the World book, there's an interesting story of Sinbad the sailor. The story goes that he was a very rich man who had a very easy life, but he got bored. So he gave up all his riches to become a sailor because he wanted to have adventure and sail around the world. And he gets into some really interesting situations as he sails. So I recommend take a look this week inside your book. In this chapter, you'll see the stories of Sinbad the sailor. Okay, so just look on your map for a minute there, and I want you guys to find some of the things on the map, okay? So please find the Red Sea. When you find the Red Sea, just point at it, please. Okay, good. Yeah, the Red Sea is down here.
Should we color it red?
You can if you'd like. What's a famous story from the Bible that includes the Red Sea? Yeah, Jaden.
When Moses split it.
Right, that's right. So way before this time, in the time of the Old Testament, Moses was there, and God divided the Red Sea so that the Israelites could pass through. So that's one thing that you may remember from the Red Sea. But around this area, you can see that's where the Arabian Peninsula is. And the country of Egypt you can see over there in the middle of the map too. Okay, can everyone locate the Persian Gulf? Where's the Persian Gulf on your map? Okay, great. The Persian Gulf has been in the news a lot. This is an area that it's important for oil imports and exports. And that's where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers come down to, in the Persian Gulf here. There's been some things recently in the news with the country of Iran capturing ships from other countries that they claim were involved in doing something wrong, because the country of Iran today is right here, next to the Persian Gulf. Yes?
Doesn't the Persian Gulf look like a chicken?
Oh, you think it was shaped like a chicken?
the thing looks like claws, and up there is a beak a little bit.
Wow, that's an interesting observation. All right. The Persian Gulf is right here, in this, over here. Can you... Yeah, well, Luke's got a good imagination for that, I guess. And the Arabian Sea. Can you all find the Arabian Sea? Where's the Arabian Sea? Yeah, that's right. So this larger...
It's the Indian Ocean.
Yeah, this larger part over here is the Indian Ocean, but as you get closer, it's part of what we call the Arabian Sea. Okay? So do you all see Baghdad on your map? Please find Baghdad.
Yes.
Okay, so Baghdad, what is Baghdad next to? The Tigris River. And it's very close to the ancient city of
Mecca.
Babylon.
Oh, wait, what?
Very close to the ancient city of Babylon is where modern-day Baghdad. Okay, so those are the most important things that I'd like to point out on your map, but there's a lot more to talk about, and we'll continue. Islam plays a part in the continuing history of the Middle Ages, and we'll get into that more on another day. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing. And for more information, please check us out at justusprep.com.